The Dauntless drifted in high orbit over the alien world, its hull reflecting the cold shine of distant suns. Captain Elias Ward stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the surface below. A sprawling city of crystalline spires caught the light and fractured it into 1,000 colors, each one sharp, deliberate, alien in its precision. He had seen dozens of worlds during his career, yet none that unsettled him quite like this. Perhaps it was the weight of history pressing in, the knowledge that humanity's next steps here could either forge a fragile alliance or cement their place as pariahs in the Orion Spur. Behind him, the bridge hummed with restrained energy. Lieutenant Connor Briggs sat at the helm, tapping fingers against his console in restless rhythm. You'd think with all their architecture, they'd have the courtesy to send a welcoming committee, he muttered, eyes flicking to his captain. Feels more like we're uninvited guests at a funeral. Dr. Marcus Hale, the ship's science officer, didn't glance up from his data stream. That's because to them, we might as well be, he said dryly. The Kaelith have outlived empires while humanity was still learning to walk upright. They see us as a curiosity, not equals. Elias turned slowly. Then it's our job to change that perception. We didn't come across half the galaxy to be dismissed as an afterthought. His voice carried the firm resolve of command, but beneath it he felt the fatigue of countless missions that had chipped away at his youth. Each step into the unknown carried risk. Still, it was risk he had chosen long ago. The comms officer cleared his throat. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Kaelith High Council. Visual feed requested. On screen, Elias said. The air shimmered with static before solidifying into a holographic image that dominated the bridge. At once, the tension sharpened. She appeared, tall, armored in ceremonial silver that shimmered faintly with alien etchings. Her features bore the severity of a warrior culture, lines cut in precision, eyes luminous like a storm held at bay. Though Elias had studied Kaelith physiology in briefings, no words had prepared him for the immediacy of her presence. She did not speak at first. She studied him. The pause stretched longer than protocol required, her gaze cutting through the hololink and locking on his. Elias felt a sudden tightening in his chest, a jolt unexpected and unwelcome. He was no stranger to alien emissaries, but this felt different, an unspoken recognition that stirred something primal in him. Briggs leaned toward Hale, whispering, "Is she supposed to look like she's measuring our bones for display?" Hale silenced him with a glance, though his lips twitched at the edge. At last, her voice broke the silence. Low, measured, each syllable carrying weight. "I am Commander Soren Kaelith, emissary of the High Council. You stand before us at their behest, though your presence is tenuous." Her gaze lingered on Elias before sweeping across the bridge. "Your kind is untested, fragile. Yet you insist upon claiming a place among us." Elias inclined his head, careful not to bow, careful not to challenge. Humanity seeks neither conquest nor subservience. We come to share knowledge, to stand as allies. The measure of our worth will not be found in age or strength, but in what we choose to build together. A faint shift crossed her face, subtle enough to escape most eyes, but not his. Noticing, that was the word that came to Elias's mind. She noticed him, not as a uniform, not as another emissary, but as an individual. Whether that was favorable or dangerous, he could not yet say. The hologram dissolved, leaving the bridge dimmer, quieter, as though her absence pulled something from the air. Briggs whistled low. "Well, that was warm and welcoming. I can practically feel the alliance already." Hale shook his head, his expression thoughtful. "No, it was a test. She wanted to see how you'd answer, Captain. The Kaelith don't waste time on pleasantries." Elias resumed his stance at the viewport. His reflection hovered faintly against the alien city below, a solitary figure against a world that seemed both magnificent and unyielding. "Tests are fine," he said. "What matters is that she looked long enough to see something worth testing." The words hung in the air. Hale frowned at them. Briggs smirked, but Elias didn't elaborate. He let the silence settle, heavy yet expectant, like the breath before the plunge. The ship hummed steadily around them, carrying them closer to a meeting that would demand more than words, closer to a people who had dismissed humanity before it had even begun. And still, Elias could not shake the image of her eyes, alien, distant, yet fixed on him as though she had glimpsed something he himself was only beginning to understand. The Dauntless continued its orbit, a solitary ember circling a world that had yet to decide whether to embrace or extinguish the flame. You said.
The shutter descended through clouds of violet mist, its hull rattling as the atmosphere pressed against it. Inside, Captain Elias Ward sat opposite his men, the dim light flickering across their faces. Dr. Marcus Hale adjusted his scanner with precise movements as though retreating into data could shield him from the weight of diplomacy. Lieutenant Connor Briggs lounged with arms folded, restless energy radiating from every shrug and smirk. Sergeant Ramirez, old and scarred, sat silent with the discipline of a man who had seen too many missions and badly. They were the away team, chosen not for comfort but for necessity, humanity distilled into four figures stepping onto alien soil. The shutter touched down on a landing platform of smooth obsidian stone. Beyond it rose towers of crystal impossibly tall, catching sunlight in prismatic busts that burned the eyes if one stared too long. Lines of guards flanked their approach, armor gleaming, spears humming faintly with embedded energy cores. Their sheer height dwarfed the humans, the air heavy with silent judgment. Elias kept his stride measured, shoulders square, every step a reminder to his men that confidence was as much weapon as shield. The council hall loomed ahead, carved into a spire that pulsed faintly as though alive. Within, the air shifted to a solemn wait. Elders seated on raised platforms gazed down at the humans like judges at trial. At the center stood Commandant Wormwood again, her presence more striking in the living light than any hollow could convey. The first Elden spoke was reverberating with disdain. Humans. Impulsive. You ask to stand among us when you have yet to master yourselves. What can you offer that time itself has not already consumed? Hale opened his mouth, but Elias lifted a hand, silencing him. The captain met the Elden's gaze. We cannot rival your years. But survival has taught us adaptability. Where age hardens, we bend. Where others see fragility, we make endurance. We don't ask to be measured by centuries lived. Measure us by what we do with the years we have. A murmur rippled through the chamber, amusement mingled with contempt. Briggs shifted beside him, whispering too loudly, "They don't look impressed." The words echoed, and Elias felt the sting of eyes sharpen. He straightened, his tone calm but edgy. "Lieutenant," a silence. The reprimand was soft enough not to humiliate, firm enough to command. Tilted her head, studying the exchange. Her eyes lingered on Elias, the faintest flicker of curiosity breaking the wall of indifference. She said nothing, yet her gaze carried weight, as though she were dissecting each word, each gesture. The session stretched on, Eldon's casting broad remarks about humanity's fragility, each dismissal a test. Elias absorbed them and answered with composure, his voice steady as stone and unerrant. He knew his men watched him, drawing steadiness from his restraint. Even Briggs, brash as he was, fell silent, recognizing the line his captain would not allow him to cross. When the council dismissed them, it was with cool finality. You may stay in the lower quarter until further notice. Do not mistake tolerance for acceptance. That night, the humans camped on the edge of the alien city, their tents dwarfed by crystalline walls that pulsed faintly under starlight. The air carried a metallic tang, foreign yet sharp with vitality. Around a small flame, the men gathered. Briggs tossed a ration pack aside with a grunt. They treat us like insects. One wrong move and they'll crush us. I don't see how tacking's going to change that. Tucking is the point, Hale replied, adjusting his glasses. They're gauging us, waiting for us to reveal weakness. They want us to break and earn their contempt. Ramirez poked at the fire, his voice low, grounded. Weakness isn't always what breaks a man. Pride does the same. Elias sat slightly apart, watching the alien spires glimmer in the distance. He heard his men but felt his mind circling elsewhere. He remembered the way had looked at him, brief, restrained yet undeniably attentive. It unsettled him. He had no time for illusions of attraction, yet the memory clung like static in his chest. Hale's voice broke through his thoughts. Captain, whatever it is you think you saw, set it aside. The see us as tools at best, threats at worst. Don't let instinct blind you. Elias didn't answer. He only nodded, as though agreeing, though something in him resisted. The night stretched uneasy, each man withdrawing into his own silence until the stillness shattered. A sound, a shrill, piercing, split the air. The camp erupted as shadows burst from the dark, separatists clad in scavenged armor, weapons glowing with unstable energy. Chaos ripped through the tents. Briggs swore, firing back with practiced reflexes. Ramirez pulled a shield unit forward, covering the scientists as plasma bolts screamed through the night. Elias drew his rifle, moving not for himself but for the figures behind the attackers, civilians, alien children darting from hiding places in terror. Without thought, he broke from cover, sprinting into the path of fire. His weapon roared, dropping one attacker then another. He slid across jagged stone, throwing his body between the children and the separatists. A blast seared across his shoulder.
The Kaelith council chamber thrummed with restrained hostility. Elders spoke in clipped tones, their luminous eyes narrowing as reports of the separatist attack spread. To them, the logic was simple. Humans had brought unrest with their arrival, and unrest was weakness. Elias Ward stood before them, his arm bound from the wound he had taken shielding alien children. Pain radiated in steady waves, but he refused to shift under their scrutiny. To flinch would be to surrender. One elder's voice cut sharper than the rest. This is what we feared. Their presence is disruption. Their chaos follows them. Remove them before their contagion spreads. Elias could feel Briggs stiffen behind him, ready to snap. Ramirez's heavy hand on the pilot's shoulder was the only thing that kept silence intact. Hale's jaw tightened, his mind already formulating rebuttals, yet Elias raised a single hand, silencing them all. His gaze fixed on the semicircle of alien leaders. If you believe us incapable, then give us the chance to prove otherwise. We will face the separatists directly, not as supplicants, but as equals. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Hale's eyes widened, alarm written across his features. Briggs muttered, "You can't be serious," under his breath, but Elias didn't turn. He held his ground, as though the words themselves were stone. Finally, it was not an elder, but Commander Soren who spoke. She stepped forward from the shadows, her armor still scarred from the night's skirmish. Her voice was measured, low enough to carry intent without flourish. A dangerous offer. You would pit your untested strength against ours? Against enemies we ourselves have not crushed. Elias's reply came with the clarity of conviction. We will not shrink from risk. Humanity has survived because we face what others believe impossible. Let us fight beside you, and judge us by our deeds, not your assumptions. The elders exchanged murmurs, some dismissive, others contemplative. In the end, they relented, not from faith, but from curiosity. Permission was granted. Elias and his men would accompany a Kaelith strike force into the wildlands where the separatists gathered. It was less an honor than a gauntlet. Preparations were swift. Weapons were checked, armor tightened, rations packed. Hale cornered Elias before departure, voice sharp. This is reckless. We don't have the numbers, the firepower, or the trust of our supposed allies. You're gambling with all of us. Elias met his protest calmly. You saw how they looked at us, Marcus. Nothing we say will matter until we show them what we are. We've been underestimated since we first reached the stars. If I fall, fine. But if we succeed, humanity gains a voice no one can ignore. The mission began under the blood-red dawn. Kaelith warriors moved like shadows through crystalline forests that shimmered faintly in alien light. The terrain was treacherous, spires of jagged stone that shifted underfoot, streams of liquid metal cutting unpredictable paths. The humans struggled to match the pace, but Elias refused to falter, setting a rhythm his men could follow. The first ambush came swiftly. Separatists emerged from the glittering undergrowth, weapons shrieking. Plasma bursts cracked the air. Briggs dove for cover, returning fire with lethal precision. Ramirez barked orders, shielding hail as the scientists scrambled to deploy a dampening field. Elias surged forward, rifle steady, directing his men with crisp commands. They held formation, fragile against the storm, yet unyielding. It was then that he realized Soren fought beside him. Her movements were fluid, each strike with her energy spear as precise as breath. She was lethal efficiency incarnate, a warrior bred of centuries of tradition. Yet when Elias pulled one of her wounded soldiers to safety rather than pressing the attack, she hesitated. Her gaze snapped to him, confusion flickering for the first time. He should have pressed the advantage, but he chose to save. Another wave came. A beast, crystalline hide bristling with energy, crashed through the trees. It roared, scattering Kaelith and human alike. Elias didn't think. He ran forward, drawing its attention, emptying his rifle into its chest until the weapon overheated. The beast turned on him, claws raking the ground. Before it struck, Soren's spear pierced its flank, her strength driving deep. The creature fell in a spray of light, dissolving into shards. Elias collapsed to one knee, the blast wound in his shoulder tearing anew. Soren knelt beside him, her voice sharper now, urgent. Why do you risk yourself this way? You could have let it take me. You could have lived. His breath came ragged, but his words were steady. Because that's not what it means to be human. We don't survive by leaving others to die. We survive by refusing to let go. For a heartbeat, silence hung between them. Around them, the battle still raged, but she held his gaze, alien eyes locked onto his as if searching for the truth beneath his words. He saw something break in her composure, the faintest tremor of recognition, almost reverence. Ramirez's voice cut through. Captain, we need you. Elias forced himself upright, pain pushed aside by necessity. He nodded once to Soren before turning back to his men. Together, they drove the separatists into retreat, every maneuver held together by sheer will and stubbornness. When the fighting ended, the field was littered with broken weapons and shards of alien crystal. The Kaelith warriors regrouped, silent in their exhaustion. Among them, Elias and his crew stood bloodied but unbroken. He had given everything he could, not for victory alone, but to prove that humanity was more than fragility. And though no word passed her lips, Soren's eyes remained on him long after the last enemy fell. Something had changed. The galaxy might still see humanity as fragile, but she had seen something else, and she could not unsee it.
The city of the was quiet in the wake of victory, its crystalline spires gleaming in subdued tones as though even the alien light acknowledged the weight of what had transpired. Within the council chamber, Hildens gathered once more, their expressions carved from stone and willing to yield even in the face of proof. Elias Ward stood at the center with his men behind him, uniforms scorched and turned, the marks of battle worn proudly across their bodies. Their silence was steady, not submissive but patient, awaiting the verdict of those who believed judgment was theirs alone to give. The eldest among them rose, voice dripping with disdain. Your kind courts danger recklessly, throwing yourselves against forces you cannot comprehend. You may survive through chance or stubbornness, but survival is not greatness. Fragility masked by desperation is still fragility. Briggs shifted, lips parting for the kind of retort that would have sparked fire, but Elias raised a hand. His voice when it came was calm, deliberate. We did not come here to prove greatness. We came to show we would not turn away, no matter the odds. Call it fragility, call it recklessness, what matters is that when others falter, we endure. That is humanity's truth. The council murmured, some scoffing, others contemplative. It was then that stepped forward, her armor still bearing scars from the battlefield. She had remained silent throughout the Elden's accusations, her gaze fixed on Elias as though weighing something unspoken. Now she broke the silence, her voice carrying through the chamber like a blade drawn from its sheath. You dismiss them as frail. Yet I fought beside them. I saw a man bleed and refused to yield. I saw men fight not for conquest or glory but for each other. They are not weak. They are unbreakable in spirit. That is strength no measure of years can grant. The chamber still. The weight of her words struck deeper than Elias's head, for she was heir to their tradition and her acknowledgement was not easily given. The Elens extended glances, their knees threading like a ripple through still water. To dismiss humans was simple, to dismiss their own commandant was another matter. Elias did not move, though a quiet pulse of relief spread through his chest. He did not smile and did not speak. To show triumph would cheapen what had been earned. Instead he stood steady, letting her words carry their own weight. At last the Eldens relented, not in praise but in concession. You will remain and an observation. Your kind may speak, though your place is not yet secured. This is no alliance, but neither is it exile. It was more than Elias had expected, though less than he had hoped. Yet he knew in his bones it was the only opening humanity could have asked for, a door cracked just enough to force a future through. Outside the chamber the men walked in silence until Briggs broke it with a low laugh. Well, Captain, you've done it. We're not welcome, but at least we're not evicted. That's progress, right? Ramirez grunted. Progress is living through a mission like that. Hale pushed his glasses higher on his nose, his tone dry. Progress is also convincing a commandant to watch for us. I still don't understand why. Elias did not answer. His thoughts lingered on the way her eyes had burned with recognition, not admiration, not affection exactly, but something deeper, acknowledgement. She had seen what he had tried to show, that humanity's heart was its strength. He had no need to explain that to his men. Some truths could only be carried in silence. Later, as the humans prepared their shutter for departure, Elias found himself looking back toward the spires. The city glimmered against the night, alive with alien light. At the edge of the platform stood. She did not approach, did not speak. She only watched. Their eyes met across the distance, no words bridging the gap, yet the silence between them felt heavy with meaning. She had noticed more than his words, more than his actions. She had noticed what he represented, what humanity represented, and she would not forget it. The engines of the ship roared to life, the sound echoing across Son and Christe. The men filed obeyed, each lost in his own thoughts. Elias lingered a moment longer, committing her silhouette to memory before turning away. As the vessel lifted from the platform and rose into the alien sky, Hale spoke softly as though reluctant to break the quiet. Do you think she saw something in us worth believing in? Elias's gaze remained fixed on the stars ahead. His voice was steady, reflective. Maybe not in us as a whole. But as